Today we live in a world where you have so many different formulas of success, and those are a bunch of people that I think are successful, but they're all very successful in very different ways. You have, Abdallah, who built a city in the desert, out of nothing. I think that's success. Sheikh, who was a very influential person and who was not a man of riches. He did not write any code. He did not have access to supercompute, but I still would debate he is probably one of the most successful people of the last 100 years. Then you have this NBA guy, I don't really know who he is, the team put this out there, but he's good at what he does as a sportsman, and sports people that can be against success. Elon, obviously, with everything that he's invested. So today you get a lot of formulas around success, and we see this all over the place. People define success as a combination of the elements that exist in their surroundings. And I'm sure all of you know a parent that once told someone that a good education plus good grades plus a good job makes you a successful person, right? We've heard this before. I don't know, some people might agree, some people might not agree, but I do think if you have a good education, you get good grades, and you get a good job, you probably landed as a consultant at McKinsey. Is that success? I don't know. To someone it could be, to someone else it can't be. And success is a very relative thing. To other people, success is money. You can get someone who inherited $1 billion from their father yesterday. Is that success? I don't know, they're very rich, but to me, that's not success, right? And that's also a big debate. But just being rich, does it make you successful? That's also another question. To other people, success is fame. And this is the age of circus monkeys, right? You open up your social media and everybody's jumping and dancing and flipping over backwards and doing whatever it takes to get like a like or a click or a share. And is that success? I don't know. Is monkeying around on social media, what likes and clicks success? I don't know. But for me, at least a very long time ago, I've decided that my success, my definition of success is impact. If what I do impacts someone's life positively, I would think that's a success. And today at Astra, when we say we have 200 million users, that's the measure of impact that we have. And that's the point I want to stop on. Success is not a prerogative. Success is not an open-ended loop. There is a quantum of success. You need to, if you are to become successful, there is a quantum, there is a scoreboard, there is something that you measure, because a lot of people tell themselves, I'm going to be successful and my success is being a good person and doing good things. If you're Buddha, that's great. If you're not, you probably have to find another prerogative to work with. So for me, that is what success, what I define success as. It is how much impact could you have on your society, on the people around you, on people that work with you, and so on. And the formula to success, which I think is something that persists alongside everyone, is you need a problem, right? You need to start with a problem. Every success, every person that we deem successful started with a problem statement. If we look at Hamid Rashid, his problem statement was vague. If you look at Cristiano Ronaldo, his problem statement was football. There is a problem. There is something that has not been done. And the problem by essence is something that was not solved. So no, building another food delivery app is not a problem, right? That's something that has been solved. Now, you need to start with a problem, and that problem has characteristics, and we'll get to that. And then, the most important thing, if we were to talk about 100 people that want to be successful, and everyone wants to be successful. Nobody's special because they wake up in the morning and they say, I want to be successful. I don't know anyone that wakes up in the morning and say, I want to fail, right? What we also, a very harsh truth that people usually neglect is that everyone that succeeded and everyone that failed started out with the exact same goals. And that's something that people forget about all the time. No one ever failed by starting and saying, we're going to build this company and fail, right? Everybody builds things thinking we're going to be successful. Both successful people and people who fail do that very equally. The differentiator is persistence. Persistence is an omnipotent thing, right? It is the all-powerful characteristic of a person. If there is, if you would go into a magic shop and they have like magic potions and you get to choose one and you would have that trait downloaded in you, if that ever happens to you, choose persistence. Because people who persist succeed. And that is just a law. That's just like, if you drink water, you quench your thirst. If you persist, you succeed. There are no people who fail that have persisted. It's just that the quantum of persistence, and when someone decided to give up, decides at their quantum of success and whether they get to their end point or not. Plus, you need intelligence, right? And intelligence is not this magical component that exists in the minds of, inventors down in, labs or however we imagine an intelligent person is. Intelligence is, subhanAllah, a God-given trait to everybody, right? And you don't need a superior IQ to become a successful person. Trust me, I've met a lot of people who have built billion-dollar companies and they're probably very average in their critical thinking ability. What intelligence is the ability to apply your intellect to a problem statement. The ability to apply your intellect is something of the sort of, we see this in the Arab world all the time. If there are 200 coffee shops on the street, it's probably not very intelligent to open 201 coffee shops on the same street, right? That doesn't take Elon Musk to decipher, That takes a very bare minimum. We'll get to questions. We'll get to questions at the end. And that's just an example that I use. And intelligence is a mix of both your cognitive ability to decipher problems and your ability to emotionally enact on your problem solution. I've built some of the most complicated technologies that have been built out of this part of the world. We built payment systems that can process billions of dollars on millisecond basis. And I am probably the least smart person on my technology team. But if I have any good in it, it was the fact that I was able to put an emotional message behind our business that would enact people who are smarter than myself technically to be able to drive towards a certain direction. And that is what I mean by intelligence here. So I don't want anybody to confuse it that, if you don't have 180 IQ, you can't build something successful. Actually, the more intelligent you are in terms of pure cognitive ability or pure IQ structure, the less likely you are to succeed financially. And that's just by case of default and the case of the world, because people who are with much higher intellect, technical intellect, they focus a lot more on single statement problem statements, which is those people are the Einsteins of the world or the Oppenheimers of the world, right? Those are people who understand one thing and they understand it concretely very well. As a founder, you're meant to understand many things at a medium level. You're not meant to understand everything super deeply, and you're not meant to understand one thing very deeply. You're meant to understand almost everything at some mediocre level. So, founders, right? A founder. Now I think this is the catchphrase that everybody wants to follow. I simply believe a founder is someone who has found a problem, right? And managed to craft an adequate solution to a problem. So it's just anybody who solved the problem is a founder of sorts. But the thing that makes founders is, I don't know, is anybody familiar with the theory of fragility? So some people argue that the whole construct of the universe is based on fragility. Everything, you can measure anything by measuring how fragile it is. And that tells us we have three kinds of materials, right? We have fragile things, and fragile things break easily. You go to the airport, they put like a red sticker on your bag, it says fragile. Fragile just breaks easily. Anything, glass is fragile in most shapes and forms. And then you have not fragile things. Things that are not fragile are things that don't break easily, like metal or, steel, concrete, whatever. Those things can break, but they're not fragile. They don't break easily. What makes founders, what makes people who actually win is anti-fragility. And anti-fragility is the direct opposite of fragility. Anti-fragile things gain by impact. Fragile things break with impact. Not fragile things sustain impact. Anti-fragile things gain from impact, right? Does that make sense to everyone, or maybe we can clarify it a bit more? So it is a thing that if you try to harm, it becomes stronger. Who knows something that's anti-fragile?
Books.
Books?
Yeah.
How? Have you tried to read a book before?
No, I said no, it has sustain. Right? Every time you try to suppress your book.
That's
Yeah,
ideas.
behind. Okay.
A book can burn, right?
Yeah, but it sustains. It sustains its time. I mean,
Could be.
muscle.
Our body is very, yes, yes. The human body is anti-fragile. Subhanallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put in the design of the human body anti-fragility. Does anybody here go to the gym? Nobody goes to the gym? It's not a very healthy cohort you have. So, subhanallah, Allah instilled in people's, in our own bodies, anti-fragility. When you go to the gym, the first thing they tell you is you have to break the muscle tissue so that it grows. That doesn't make sense, right? In the construct that you have to break something for it to grow, that's how our bodies are designed. And subhanAllah, it's the exact same way with our emotions. Has anybody got their heart broken here before? No? Nobody fell in love here? No? When people get through hard emotional situations, they most of the time become stronger. They don't become weaker. And so on and so forth. This actually applies to the economy. To the, I get what you tried to say, but a book is a fragile thing because you can tear it, you can burn it, you can whatever. But evolution or invention is anti-fragile. When the printing press was invented, the Ottoman Empire was the ruling empire of the world at the time, and the Sultan decided that the printer is haram. And yeah, the guy woke up that day and said the printer is haram. But that did not stop the printing press from growing. It actually became much bigger. And so on and so forth. War is the same. We go to war with the hopes of destroying things, but we end up making them much stronger, because if we didn't go to war, we wouldn't have the weapons we would have today. We wouldn't have evolved that system as much as it did today. Anti-fragility is something that's in people. It's in each and every one of us biologically, but most people lose it by applying to comfort, right? The exact opposite of anti-fragility is comfort. We induce too much comfort to the point where we inject ourselves with fragility. In order for you to be successful in your business, you have to be an anti-fragile person, and you have to create an anti-fragile organization, meaning you know for a fact you're going to get hit. You know for a fact something's going to punch your company in the face at any given point. And you know for a fact you're going to compete, you're going to be on the market, and things are going to break, and you know your code is going to collapse, and your servers are going to fall, and those problems are going to happen. And then there is two kinds of companies that emerge. Companies that become stronger from their failures, and Nokia. And companies who decide to say, we're really very comfortable with, we're never going to fail. We're too good to fail. And, that's, we all know what happens. So I do believe that founders, in principle, are anti-fragile beings. And then we come to the problem. Those are anti-fragile people, remember, and they find a problem. Today, the problem with most businesses is they don't have a problem. And that's what I see as an investor. I've been investing in tech for the past, 10 years. I've invested in things like Snowflake and things like a dog walking company that never saw sunlight, right? So what you see with most businesses today is there is really not a problem. You're not really solving a problem. And a problem has to have a bunch of characteristics for you to actually direct your effort towards it. If it's your problem, good. But most of the time, we live in subhanallah, a time of taraf in very lavish places. A place like Qatar, a place like Dubai, those are very lavish cities. The rules of what applies to the rest of humanity does not apply to us as much in those places. We have different sets of problem statements. But A lot of the time, we can be led to believe that our problems are real, while most of the time they're not. And I'll give you an example. I had my sister come up to me the other day and say, I want to start this beauty business that does a $13,000 beauty treatment. And I'm like, apart from very rich divorced women, who'd pay for $13,000 for a beauty treatment? And her financial analysis projected that 1 million people would buy into that the first year. There are not 1 million people with $13,000 to spend on how they look, right? That's something that escapes a lot of us when we think about problem statement. So the point I'm trying to make here is my sister was up to no problem statement. I meet a lot of guys and they come to me and they say, I want to start a coffee shop. And I'm like, great. Whose problem are you solving? Because if I want a coffee today, there's like 6,000 different ways I can get a coffee. And you might be solving the very residual 0.16001% problem for your neighbor who really likes you and wants to buy your coffee. But is that a business? That's the question. So a lot of the time I ask people, why are you building a company? Why are you trying to start a business? And then they come, why are you trying to start a restaurant? Is anybody here trying to start a restaurant? Thank you. So let me, I can keep going on the restaurant point. Sorry?
Not in Qatar for sure.
Not in Qatar. So I would ask someone, they say, I'm trying to start a restaurant. I'm like, okay, and why are you trying to start a restaurant? They're like, because I want to sell the best coffee. I'm like, that's not a reason to start a coffee business. You start a business, if you're starting a business, what does a business produce? Solution. Money, folk. A business produces money. If it does not produce money, it's a hobby, right? Keep that ingrained in your mind. If it does not make money, it's a hobby. It's not a business. Charity could be a very cool hobby. Businesses make money. That's what businesses produce. So we lead on to this conversation, and I say, okay, you're trying to start a restaurant. What are you trying to do? I'm gonna make coffee. You're not trying to make coffee. Let's get the fact straight. You're trying to make money. If you're trying to make money, how much are you gonna invest in this restaurant? 1 million dirhams or 1 million riyals or whatever the number is. Okay, how many coffees do you need to sell to make back 1 million riyals? Probably something like 1 million coffees. And then when you calculate your rent and this and that and the other, at the end of the day, how much money are you going to be making? On your 1 million riyals, if everything goes great and everybody loves your coffee and nothing spills, you'll probably make 15%. You could have deposited that money in the bank in a structured product and made 15%. That's a fundamental question that a lot of people don't ask themselves before they journey on to make a business. And please don't get me wrong. You should never ever, and you can quote me on this, you should never ever start a business based on financial return. But if your point is to make 15%, deposit the money in the bank. Don't start a coffee shop. It's a much safer, much faster way for you to make money. It saves everybody a lot of hassle. When you start looking for a problem, it has to be painful. Most problems are necessities. I personally build businesses on top of necessities. I don't like to build businesses that have an alternative to, right? I do believe that the first thing people fled out when human behavior kicks in is luxuries. So I don't build any businesses in that space. I know that, for example, with our calling business, people have the necessity of calling each other. We had a flood in the UAE, when was it? A few weeks ago. And you know what's the first thing that stopped working? Food delivery apps. Because they're a luxury, they're not a necessity. This is not necessary. If I were hungry and hunger was the real thing, I'd probably eat anything else and probably not wait for Deliveroo to bring me a hot meal from I don't know where, right? What else stopped working? You can start measuring against that, but people never stop calling each other. People never stop texting each other. People never stop sending money to each other. So I try to build businesses on top of necessities. It needs to be painful. It needs to be something that people go through pain to do, and that needs to be part of your problem statement. About a year ago, I had the idea of putting our team together and saying, listen, I want people to text money to each other. I want a person sitting in the UAE to use Botim to text money back to India. And when the team was like, why? This is a very old business. Remittance is a very ancient business. People have been doing remittances for 30 years and 40 years, and there are billion-dollar businesses in this space. My answer was because I don't want people to stand in line. It is painful to stand in line. And if I want to send money to India now from the UAE, I don't know how the situation is in Qatar, I need to go stand in line. I personally don't like to stand in line, and I know a construction worker who spent 9 hours in the sun that day doesn't really want to stand in line. That was the bet. That was the pain. But the second stage of that pain is that problem statement was big enough. How many people need to send money back home? Almost everybody who's out of home needs to send money back home, right? So it's painful and it's scalable. Those are two very important things. And it's impactful. There is an impact. You are improving someone's life marginally. You are making their life a lot better by one thing. And guess what? It makes money. It makes money. We don't do that for free. It's not charity. It's monetizable. We can monetize that service. And when we built that, and we just bet on the fact that we are going to make this as simple as sending a text, we grew up from a zero remittance company in a very crowded remittance market into today the biggest digital remittance company in the UAE, and that happened in 6 months. This is not to say that we have some kind of hidden genius, or I get some kind of midnight inspirations and I go read them. No, it's just a very simple problem statement. We don't want people to stand in line, and we want people to send money like they know how to text. We know people know how to text. We know people use their phones all the time. We know people chat with their family back home. Now we want them to send money back home. And that became a $1 billion problem statement. That on its own became a $1 billion business. And here are some examples of businesses, everybody knows. And you will find that every problem statement that those businesses are solving for, whether it's Soup or Airbnb, there was a pain, right? And then there was a ready market to absorb that pain. What do we mean by ripeness? Does anybody have like an idea what do we mean by a market is ripe for something? Yes.
Timing?
Timing?
In terms of the curve.
Timing, but what timing in terms of what?
Sorry?
Adoption, right? So ideally, right before Mr. Sam Altman came about, we used to calculate market ripeness in accordance of Moore's law. Anybody familiar with Moore's law? Right?
80% of the people have like 80% of the world.
No. Moore's was a computer scientist.
For the processor?
The processor.
So James Moore's, what he said was that the speed of compute, the number of bits on a semiconductor chip will double every 24 months. And that means that the speed of compute can double every 2 years. That was very right for a very long time, but I think now with supercompute, we're even moving a lot faster than what Moore's predicted. And why is that relevant to us today? Somebody pitch me their idea. What are you building? Somebody who's building a business. Tech. Anyway, yes.
This is called hackathon in financial digital assets and fintech.
Okay, financial assets, fintech, a hackathon. For that to happen, you need computers, right, that are connected to a certain speed internet. If you were trying to do this in 1995, you would have neither the hardware or the internet speed to manage to be able to run this. And that's what ripeness usually was, especially in technology. You need to calculate that are there enough people in this market with access to good enough computers, cell phones, whatever your market target is, and is the internet speed significant enough? Back to my point in the beginning when I said in places like Qatar, the UAE, the GCC, we live in a synthetic environment because we forget that about 60% of the world does not have internet yet, right? There are more people in the world that do not have access to internet than people who do have access to internet. And that's why the market ripeness remains a very important measure when you look at places like Nigeria or Sierra Leone or countries where you don't really have the access that we have here. And then you look at the impact. You want to be able to make sure what kind of keyboard does everybody use here? A QWERTY keyboard, right? You know that. Everybody uses a QWERTY keyboard. You know QWERTY is actually the slowest kind of keyboard. Does anybody know a developer or anybody that writes code? Nobody writes code? Usually developers would use mechanical keyboards or non-QWERTY keyboards because they're better. You can actually type faster. But you know why QWERTY keyboards are the only successful keyboards we have? It's because nothing after was 10 times better, and that's an accurate measure. In order for people to switch from one conduct of doing things to another conduct of doing things, the new innovation needs to be at least 10 times better. At least 10 times better. And that's a real measurable scale of doing things. Before the printer, what did we have? The typewriters, right? For people to switch from the typewriter to the printer, it had to be 10 times better. The printer is 10 times better than the typewriter, and you can measure that because it can do it 10 times faster or more. It can do it 10 times easier or more, and it can do it a magnitude of times more, and it's 10 times cheaper. To manufacture a printer is a lot cheaper than manufacturing a typewriter. And that's how you would measure your impact. Are you creating something that's improving somebody's life 10 times more, or are you actually improving their life 5%, 10%? People don't switch for 5%. People don't switch for 10%. People switch for a minimum of 100%. And that's something very important for us to keep in mind. The next generation of food apps need to be 10 times better than the existing food apps for them to succeed. The next generation of mobile phones and handhelds need to be 10 times better than what we have today. They cannot be. Everybody uses an iPhone, yeah? Is it the best phone in the world? Not by any measure, right? There are phones that are faster, there are bigger screens, there are, more enabled touch, there are phones that run games. But why do they have the highest adoption? Or why do they have very high adoption and people are not switching? Because nothing else is 10 times better than an iPhone. Might be 20% better, might be 30%, might be twice better than an iPhone. Nothing else is 10 times better, and that's where switching happens in. The fourth part is that your problem statement needs to be monetizable. It needs to make money. And that's not me being a greedy capitalist who wants to make a problem statement. Sustainability. Sustainability of a business depends on the bottom line, right? I was one of the very few people who shorted Uber when Uber IPO'd at $100 billion, and I was told by my bankers that I'm retarded for doing so, right? Why would I short a company like Uber when the stock projection was going from, at the time Uber listed, I think it listed at something like $40 billion, and it kept going up to $100 billion, and I kept shorting for one reason. This business doesn't make money. It's a business that doesn't make money, and that's a fundamental problem. You can be cool, you can be flashy, you can run for a minute, but if you don't make money, this business will collapse. And this is what we see. Businesses that sustain, businesses that live for 100 years, businesses that live for 20 years, for 10 years, are businesses that have a very healthy balance sheet, they have a very healthy monetization structure, because there are two things that happen. You know for a fact someone is going to out-innovate you. Someone is going to build something better than what you have. If you don't have the dry powder to buy them, you need to have the dry powder to compete with them. And you need to have the dry powder to at least pivot and continue in that business. If you run on top of a business that's like a very cool idea that doesn't make money, you'll end up like all the blockchain founders, right? They all raised a ton of money, but nobody made any money, and now nobody wants to invest in them anymore because AI. I don't know if this example I'm going to use is adequate, but it's like a fast dating game with investors. You come with blockchain, you're the prettiest girl in the room, and everybody wants to invest in you, and then AI comes about, and then you're ugly. Nobody wants to look at you. Everybody wants to invest in the new hot thing, and that's how it keeps evolving. First, it was .com. .com stopped being cool. But the companies that made money back in .com are still making money today. Google was making money back in the .com, right? And it's still making money today. And so on and so forth. So again, focus on the problem. A problem is an extremely important thing. And then you have the examples of companies that were not solving a problem or that were solving a problem that got basically disrupted. I've spoken a bit about more of our businesses and so on, and this is what the finishing note that I want to finish up with. I don't like this slide because it looks like a lot of a flex, which is something I don't really do. But I think, over the past few years, I've raised or we've done businesses that generated north of $2 billion worth of investor funding and so on. And this is, I think, a point that everybody tries to ask about. What do I do to convince investors? Or is anybody trying to raise money? Okay, so this is relevant. There is this, I don't know what it is, but there is this FOMO of how can I convince investors? How can I bring investors into my business? I need the money, I need the money. If you start a business with the concept of I need investors, this is not a good business, right? None of the big businesses that you see today started with an investor. I want you all, when you go back home today, to research the biggest tech companies that you know and check when did investors join, right? Investors join at a point that we call PMF. Does anybody know what PMF is?
Product market fit.
Yes. PMF is product market fit. That's when your investors should join. What does that mean? It means that you found a problem, you built a solution, and you have a client. Even if it's just one client, but you've solved somebody's problem and got them to pay you for it. Then you've unlocked product market fit. Because if you have PMF, guess what happens if investors don't come in? Yeah, right? You can pay the bills. And eventually, you can sustain long enough till you raise that amount of money. The stupidest thing in the world is people who go to investors and they say, what do you want me to build in my business so that you can invest in it? You know what investors are like, and let me decipher this for you, at least for me now. And I've been in this ecosystem for long. I've never raised any venture capital money. That's a disclaimer. So I've never taken money from any VCs, because I'll tell you what a VC is. A VC is a bunch of very cool guys who probably went to Stanford or somewhere in that neighborhood, and they all took somebody else's money. It's none of their money, right? They all have a rich uncle or somebody who gave them a bit of money, and they've convinced this person, we're gonna make you 100x on your money because I drank from the same cup of coffee that Kalanick drank from when he started Uber. That's the pitch. So they promised somebody 100x return. Those people, in most VCs, at least in our part of the world, never operated a business. They never started a business. A lot of them started like shawarma shops and stuff, but like none of them actually built a proper technology business that you can actually go and look at and say, okay, this person was actually have done it for themselves before. So this person will come to you and will start looking at your business and will start giving you advice based on, I don't know, their investment in their shawarma shop. Like that's how they would scale you. And they would judge your business based on what they could not do, right? If they failed somewhere, they will apply their failure to you. And they will say, I couldn't solve that problem. So you probably couldn't solve that problem. But guess what? You're a guy from Stanford wearing a vest, raising somebody else's money. You're not the smartest guy in the world. You probably don't know. If a VC knew what idea is going to make $1 billion next, they would have built it themselves, right? They would not have waited for someone else to build it. But we need to unlock the part of dependence where we say, if investors don't come into my business, it's a failure. Or if investors don't come and put in $1 million into my business, it's a failure. That's a very wrong conjunction. If you're raising money and you're going after somebody else's money, make sure you're at PMF. If you're not at PMF, you're not ready to raise money. And I know there's a lot of people who have ideas, right? There's a lot of people that I have the idea, and if only I could get $1 million, that doesn't go anywhere. That kind of thing doesn't take you anywhere. Everyone has ideas. My son is like 4 years old and he has great ideas. But everyone has ideas. So if you only have an idea, that doesn't really mean much. And this is something I say like with all the love in the world, because I see it in a very repetitive. A lot of people are victim of their own genius, right? They always believe, I have the idea that nobody else thought about. That doesn't matter. Idea is not worth anything. One thing I don't do in our business is I don't sign NDAs. I've never signed any business, and I never gave anyone an NDA and told them, please sign this NDA so you don't steal my ideas. By all means, go ahead and steal my ideas. If idea theft was that simple, or if anybody that heard an idea could steal it and make it happen, nobody would have built what they've built. Perseverance is what builds businesses, not ideas. Everybody has concepts. Everybody, before they go to bed at night, they dream of things and they think of things and they think they can achieve them. But unless you put your back into it and you get on the floor and actually execute, you probably will not build that idea. And I'm going to stop here. Wallahu a'lam. This is all my opinion.